I've never met an intelligent woman that I'd want to date.
On behalf of the intelligent women around the world, may I just say,
Take it.
You didn't have to do this.
Take it!
Thank you. Thank you, Aunt Josie.
You're a good boy, David.
I got a branch manager who's giving me the silent treatment. Speak to me. Speak.
Remember the sinking feeling? That moment, a key face from your favorite sitcom ensemble suddenly vanishes from the opening credits. It's a tear in the fabric of a fictional family, a disruption that leaves viewers asking, wait, where did they go? Before a show recasts, retools, or dies, there's often an off-screen story of ego, money, or heartbreak. Today, we're counting 20 sitcom stars whose sudden departures left a massive hole in their shows. 1. Janet Hubert from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Carlton, you are not going to MacArthur Park tonight. In fact, none of you are going to MacArthur Park tonight.
Wait a minute.
Boy, do not test me.
Yes, ma'am.
For 3 seasons, Janet Hubert was Vivian Banks. She was the anchor of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, a stylish, intelligent, and fiercely loving matriarch who could deliver a withering look or a powerful dance routine with equal grace. She wasn't just a sitcom mom, she was a force. The chemistry between her and the young, electrifying Will Smith felt genuine and warm. Then, in 1993, Season 4 premiered, and Aunt Viv was different, shorter, lighter-skinned, played by a new actress, Daphne Maxwell Reid. The show made a winking joke about the change, but behind the scenes, it was no laughing matter. For decades, the narrative, largely driven by Smith and Alfonso Ribeiro Carlton, was that Hubert was difficult, bitter, and jealous of Smith's rising star. Smith famously said she wanted the show to be the Aunt Viv of Bel-Air. Hubert's career stalled, and she was labeled as a troublemaker. The truth, as revealed in a raw and emotional 2020 reunion, was far more complex. Hubert explained she was in a difficult home life and that a salary dispute with NBC, not a feud with Smith, was the primary issue. When they refused to negotiate and cut her pay, she refused the offer. The feud with Smith was real, but it stemmed from a feeling of abandonment during a vulnerable time. Shockingly, the iconic Banks family mansion wasn't even in Bel-Air. The exterior shots were filmed at a home in the nearby affluent neighborhood of Brentwood. Furthermore, the show was almost sued by a university professor who claimed the plot was stolen from a script he had submitted years earlier. The case was eventually dismissed, but it proves the show's origins were more complicated than just a ride in a Fresh Prince's cab. 2. Suzanne Summers from Three's Company.
Hey, Chrissy, you want to hear about my dream? Yeah. Good. I'll call you back when I've had it.
In the late 1970s, there was no bigger show than Three's Company and no bigger breakout star than Suzanne Summers. As the bubbly, ditzy, but surprisingly savvy Chrissy Snow, she was the heart of the show's comedic engine. Her on-screen chemistry with John Ritter and Joyce DeWitt was lightning in a bottle. The show was a ratings behemoth, and Summers was a cultural phenomenon. She was on top of the world. Then she committed the cardinal sin of 1980s television. She asked to be paid like a man. Going into Season 5, Summers, emboldened by her massive popularity, demanded a pay raise from $30,000 an episode to $150,000, an amount equal to what her co-star John Ritter was making. She also requested a 10% ownership stake in the show. The network, ABC, was not amused. Their response was swift and brutal. They refused her demands and began to systematically phase her out. For the rest of the season, her role was reduced to a bizarre 60-second phone call tacked on to the end of each episode, filmed on a separate set, away from the main cast. It was awkward and deeply uncomfortable to watch. A shocking detail is that the network censors were so strict they had a full-time employee whose only job was to watch rehearsals and edit out any dialogue or action deemed too risque. This censor fought constantly with the producers over the show's endless barrage of innuendo. The show itself was based on a British sitcom called Man About the House, which was far more explicit than its American counterpart ever could be. 3. McLean Stevenson from MASH.
That's a decision I'll decide when I decide and make my decision, and that will decide.
Leaving a successful show is a gamble. Leaving one of the most critically acclaimed and beloved shows of all time at the peak of its popularity isn't just a gamble. It's a high-wire act without a net. That is the story of McLean Stevenson. As Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, the bumbling, lovable, and surprisingly effective leader of the 4077, Stevenson was the warm, paternal center of MASH. He earned an Emmy nomination and was a fan favorite. But Stevenson didn't want to be part of an ensemble, even a legendary one. He wanted to be the star. Convinced his future was brighter as a leading man, he asked to be let out of his contract after the 3rd season. The producers, Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds, granted his wish but decided to give him a send-off that would be remembered forever. In the final moments of the Season 3 finale, Abyssinia Henry Radar O'Reilly walks into the operating room and announces with a trembling voice that Henry Blake's plane was shot down over the Sea of Japan. There were no survivors. It was a gut punch of a moment, one of the most shocking and powerful in TV history, and it was filmed without the laugh track. A shocking fact is that the script for this final scene was kept secret from the cast until the moment of filming to capture their genuine reactions of shock and sadness. The network, CBS, fought tooth and nail to keep a laugh track on the show, especially during operating room scenes, but the producers eventually won that battle. Even more surprisingly, Gary Berghoff, who played Radar, was the only actor to play the same role in both the original Robert Altman movie and the TV series. 4. Shelley Long from Cheers.
I've never met an intelligent woman that I'd want to date.
On behalf of the intelligent women around the world, may I just say,
The will they won't they dynamic between Sam Malone and Diane Chambers was the rocket fuel that launched Cheers into the stratosphere. It was a masterpiece of romantic and comedic tension, and at its center was Shelley Long's masterful performance of Diane, a pretentious, hyperarticulate, and deeply insecure intellectual who was both infuriating and lovable. She won an Emmy and a Golden Globe for the role. Cheers was the biggest comedy on television. And then, after 5 perfect seasons, Long decided to walk away. Her reasoning was twofold. She wanted to spend more time with her young daughter, and she wanted to pursue a movie career. The news was a seismic shock to the TV landscape. How could Cheers possibly survive without one of its 2 central pillars? The show pulled off the impossible. They replaced Diane with a new character, the neurotic and gold-digging Rebecca Howe, played by Kirstie Alley. The dynamic shifted, but the show thrived, running for another 6 seasons. A shocking detail most people forget is that Cheers was nearly canceled after its first season, ranking almost dead last in the ratings before a summer of reruns finally built an audience. The character of Frasier Crane was only ever intended to be a temporary obstacle for Sam and Diane, slated for just a handful of episodes before being written out. Instead, Kelsey Grammer ended up playing the character for 20 consecutive years across 2 different hit shows. 5. Lisa Bonet from a Different World.
Hi, Theo. Can I please borrow $15?
From whom?
Lisa Bonet as Denise Huxtable was the epitome of 80s cool on The Cosby Show. Her bohemian style and rebellious streak made her a fan favorite, so much so that she was given her own spin-off, A Different World, which followed Denise to the fictional Hillman College. The show was an instant hit, a groundbreaking look at life at a historically black college. But Bonet's tenure as the show's star was shockingly brief. After the first season, she was gone. The official reason was one of the most talked about creative differences in TV history. During the show's hiatus, Bonet married musician Lenny Kravitz and became pregnant. She had also just starred in the controversial explicit film Angel Heart. Producer Bill Cosby, who cultivated a squeaky clean image for his shows, reportedly felt that a pregnant Denise didn't fit the vision for the character. So, Denise Huxtable was written out of her own show and sent back to The Cosby Show. A Different World was retooled, shifting its focus to other characters. Miraculously, the show got even better, becoming a culturally significant and beloved sitcom in its own right. A shocking fact is that after Bonet's departure, new producer Debbie Allen made it her mission to tackle serious issues like AIDS, date rape, and racism. Topics unheard of for a network sitcom at the time. The show even featured guest appearances from a young Tupac Shakur, who had a romance with Jada Pinkett's character. Even more surprisingly, superstar Halle Berry auditioned for the show but was ultimately not cast. 6. Topher Grace from That 70s Show.
I've got some questions I want answers. What are you doing about moving out?
I don't know.
Your job.
I don't know.
Your future.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit you with an... I don't know.
For 7 seasons, Eric Foreman was the focal point of That 70s Show. He was the nerdy, sarcastic, and lovable kid whose basement served as the hub for the entire gang. His relationship with Donna Pinciotti was the show's central romance, and his interactions with his family, particularly his domineering father Red, provided the show's biggest laughs. Topher Grace was That 70s Show. Then, at the end of season 7, he decided he wanted to be a movie star. Grace opted not to renew his contract, choosing instead to pursue a film career, most notably playing Venom in Spider-Man 3. His departure ripped the heart out of the series. To make matters worse, Ashton Kutcher, who played the lovable idiot Kelso, also left at the same time, reducing his role to a recurring guest star. The show's solution was a disaster. They introduced a new character, Randy Pearson, who was a bland, unlikable hybrid of Eric and Kelso. A shocking fact about the show is that the famous circle scenes, where the gang smoked in the basement, were filmed using herbal, tobacco-free cigarettes, and the smoke was often just strawberry-scented vapor. The show's original working title was Teenage Wasteland, but they couldn't secure the rights to the song from The Who. The final title was chosen as a last-minute placeholder name that the network simply decided to keep. 7. Steve Carell from The Office.
I got a branch manager who's giving me the silent treatment. Speak to me. Speak.
Sometimes a star's exit is less of a sudden shock and more of a long, painful, and meticulously planned goodbye. That was the case with Steve Carell's departure from The Office. As Michael Scott, the world's best boss, Carell created one of the most iconic and beloved sitcom characters of all time. He was the cringeworthy, inappropriate, but ultimately good-hearted soul of Dunder Mifflin. In 2010, during an interview, Carell casually mentioned that the upcoming 7th season would likely be his last, fulfilling his original contract. The producers and the network were caught off guard, but it set in motion a season-long farewell tour. The writers crafted a beautiful and emotional arc for Michael, allowing him to find love with Holly Flax and finally get the family he'd always craved. His finale, Goodbye Michael, is a masterclass in emotional television, a perfect send-off for a legendary character. The show, however, never recovered. A shocking detail is that Rainn Wilson, who iconically played Dwight Schrute, had originally auditioned for the role of Michael Scott. In another twist, Seth Rogen, Patton Oswalt, and Bob Odenkirk were all seriously considered for Dwight's role. Even more surprisingly, the iconic opening credit sequence was filmed by John Krasinski on a research trip to Scranton before the show even began, giving it an authentic, homemade feel. 8. Chevy Chase from Community.
Every man should be punched in the face. It's a rite of passage. In my day, Friday night was smoke a doobie, feel up a gal, and then get your teeth knocked out by a Republican.
Chevy Chase was comedy royalty, a legendary figure from the original cast of Saturday Night Live. His casting as Pierce Hawthorne, the aging, out-of-touch, and deeply offensive millionaire in Community, was a stroke of genius. It was a perfect marriage of a cantankerous actor and a cantankerous character. For a while, it worked beautifully. But behind the scenes, the marriage was falling apart. Chase was notoriously difficult to work with. He clashed frequently with creator Dan Harmon, openly mocked the show's writing, and was unhappy with the long hours. The tension boiled over during the filming of Season 4, when Chase reportedly used a racial slur on set in a moment of frustration. The incident was the final straw. Chase and the show mutually agreed to part ways. His character, Pierce, was killed off at the beginning of Season 5, dying off-screen from dehydration after donating his sperm. It was a fittingly bizarre end for a bizarre character. A shocking detail is that the role of Jeff Winger was originally offered to actor Joel McHale's friend, who turned it down, so McHale got the part instead. In another twist, the show's fan-favorite Dungeons & Dragons episode was controversially pulled from streaming services years later due to a scene involving blackface makeup. The constant genre parodies were so ambitious that the show nearly exhausted its budget every single week. 9. Valerie Harper from Valerie.
Oh, Aunt Josephine.
What smells?
Dinner?
This is perhaps the most audacious story of a star leaving their show, because Valerie Harper didn't just leave, she was fired from the sitcom that bore her name. In 1986, Harper, a TV icon thanks to The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and Rhoda, starred in a new sitcom called Valerie, playing a mother of 3 boys. The show was a solid rating success for NBC. But by Season 2, a bitter dispute had erupted between Harper and Lorimar, the show's production company. Harper and her husband, who was a producer on the show, argued for a bigger creative role and a larger salary. Lorimar accused them of disruptive behavior. The fight got ugly and went public. The network, desperate to save its hit, tried to mediate, but it was too late. Lorimar fired Valerie Harper from her own show. In a move of stunning ruthlessness, they killed off her character in a car accident and retitled the show Valerie's Family. A shocking detail is that Harper sued Lorimar for wrongful termination and ultimately won, being awarded over $1.4 million in damages, plus a percentage of the show's profits. The show then changed its name a second time to the Hogan Family, a nearly unprecedented move that signaled the utter chaos behind the scenes. In an even stranger twist, a young Jason Bateman, who played the oldest son, would later use his clout to direct several episodes of the bizarrely rebranded series. 10. Jay Thomas from Cheers.
Do it, Sam. I'd almost like to see what would go out with him. Besides me, I mean. Well, he kind of grows on you, you know.
Sometimes the reason a star leaves a show isn't about money or movie roles. Sometimes it's about running your mouth. Jay Thomas had a popular recurring role on Cheers as Eddie LeBec, a goofy goalie for the Boston Bruins and the husband of barmaid Carla Tortoni. He was a fun, memorable part of the show's golden era. At the same time, Thomas was hosting a popular radio show. According to legend, a listener called in and asked him what it was like to be on Cheers. Thomas spoke glowingly about the cast, but then made a fatal error. When asked about having to kiss his on-screen wife, played by the beloved Rhea Perlman, he reportedly made a disparaging comment about it. That comment allegedly made its way back to Perlman. Suddenly, the writers decided Carla and Eddie's marriage needed a shakeup. In the Season 8 premiere, it's revealed that Eddie was killed in a freak Zamboni accident. A shocking fact about the show is that Ted Danson wore a toupee to play the famously vain Sam Malone, a secret kept for most of the show's run. Additionally, the real-life Boston bar the show was based on, the Bull and Finch Pub, became such a massive tourist trap that it had to open a second replica location to handle the crowds. Even more bizarrely, the U.S. government once used a cutout of the Cheers cast to create a fake bar in Moscow for a spy operation.
Maybe I am psychic.
Maybe you are.
Julie, you could have been killed in my avalanche.
11. Mackenzie Phillips from One Day at a Time. One Day at a Time was a groundbreaking sitcom in the 1970s, tackling serious issues through the lens of a single mother, Bonnie Franklin, and raising two teenage daughters. The rebellious older daughter, Julie Cooper, was played by Mackenzie Phillips, who became a teen idol. The show was a massive hit, and Phillips was one of its biggest stars. But behind her on-screen success, Phillips was struggling with severe and alcohol addiction. Her behavior became increasingly erratic, and her health was deteriorating. After several warnings and suspensions, the show's producers made the difficult decision to fire her during the 5th season. Her character, Julie, was written out, said to have run off and gotten married. Phillips returned to the show a few years later, but her struggles continued, and she was fired a second time. It was a tragic revolving door of a talented young actress battling her demons in the public eye. A shocking fact is that the show was developed by legendary producer Norman Lear, who used it to explore feminist themes that were radical for television at the time. The show's pilot was actually shot with a different actress playing the younger sister, Barbara, before Valerie Bertinelli was cast. In an even bolder move, the series was one of the first sitcoms to have a main character, Anne Romano, explicitly identify as divorced rather than widowed.
Kelly, who could now face a felony domestic violence charge, says the accusations against her are false.
12th, Lisa Robin Kelly from That 70s Show. Much like her co-star Topher Grace, Lisa Robin Kelly was an integral part of the early success of That 70s Show. As Eric Foreman's manipulative, promiscuous, and hilarious older sister Lori, she was a fantastic comedic foil. Her dumb but cunning persona and her secret affair with Kelso provided some of the show's most memorable storylines. But during the show's 3rd season, Kelly abruptly left. Her character was said to have gone off to beauty school. The real reason was far more serious. Kelly was battling a severe alcohol addiction, and it was making it impossible for her to continue working. She returned briefly in Season 5, but was ultimately replaced by actress Christina Moore for Season 6. The change was jarring for viewers, and Moore, despite her best efforts, couldn't replicate Kelly's unique comedic energy. A shocking detail from the casting process is that Mila Kunis, who played Jackie, famously lied about her age to get the part. She was only 14 at the time, but told producers she would be 18 on her birthday, failing to specify which birthday. The creators also considered casting James Franco for the role of Hyde, which eventually went to Danny Masterson. In a testament to the show's 70s vibe, the original set for Foreman's basement was so authentically drab that the network demanded they add more color and brighter lighting.
You're leaving Silicon Valley. Why?
Because
you're too big for it, right?
No.
13. T.J. Miller from Silicon Valley. For 4 seasons of HBO's brilliant tech satire Silicon Valley, T.J. Miller was the undeniable scene stealer. As Ehrlich Bachman, the arrogant, perpetually stoned, and profoundly delusional incubator owner, Miller created a truly iconic character. He was the chaotic, id-driven force at the center of the show's comedy, and he won a Critics' Choice Award for the role. Then, just as the 4th season was airing, HBO announced that Miller would not be returning. The split was not amicable. The producers and other cast members hinted that Miller had become difficult to work with, often showing up late and unprepared. Miller, for his part, claimed he felt the show had become repetitive and that he wanted to pursue other projects. The feud spilled into the press, with both sides taking shots at each other. A shocking fact is that the incredibly complex math behind the infamous optimal tip-to-tip efficiency joke in Season 1 was actually a real 10-page academic paper written by a Stanford University professor. The show's creators went to extreme lengths to ensure the technology, no matter how absurd, was theoretically plausible. For instance, the compression algorithm at the heart of the show is based on real-world data compression principles, making the satire bite even harder.
It's a very fun family sitcom. You can watch it with your whole family. I think people are going to find it highly relatable.
14. Erin Hayes from Kevin Can Wait. This might be the single most brutal and cold-blooded departure in modern sitcom history. Erin Hayes starred opposite Kevin James in the CBS sitcom Kevin Can Wait, playing his wife, Donna. The show was a ratings success in its first season, a standard family sitcom built around James's everyman persona. Then, the network decided to make a change. For Season 2, they wanted to bring in James's former King of Queens co-star, Leah Remini, as a series regular to try and recapture their old chemistry. To do that, they needed to get rid of the wife. Instead of a divorce or a separation, the showrunners opted for the nuclear option. When Season 2 premiered, it was revealed that Donna had died off-screen more than a year prior. The show offered no explanation, no emotional moments, and barely acknowledged her passing before moving on with the new status quo. A shocking detail is that the decision was met with such immediate backlash that number Not My Donna began trending on social media. Even more surprisingly, the show's premise was eerily similar to an alternate pilot James had developed, which also featured Leah Remini, suggesting the brutal retooling may have been the plan all along. This move is now frequently cited in writers' rooms as a perfect example of how not to handle a character's exit.
What are you thinking bringing me that girl from the police academy? What's wrong with Pepper?
Allow me. Arms?
15. Damon Wayans Jr. from New Girl. This is a rare case where a star left a show before it even truly began. When the pilot for New Girl was filmed, Damon Wayans Jr. was cast as Coach, one of the 3 quirky roommates living with Jess, Zooey Deschanel. His performance was sharp, funny, and he had great chemistry with the cast. There was just one problem. At the time he filmed the pilot, his other show, the ABC sitcom Happy Endings, was on the verge of cancellation. But then, Happy Endings got a surprise last-minute renewal. Wayans was contractually obligated to return to that show, leaving New Girl with a massive hole in its cast just as it was getting started. The show scrambled and created a new character, Winston Bishop, played by Lamorne Morris, who moved in to take Coach's room. A shocking fact is that Max Greenfield's audition for Schmidt was so outrageously over the top that he completely reshaped the character from what was originally written. The show's iconic douchebag jar was a real prop on set that the cast and crew would actually contribute money to when they messed up or said something out of line. Even more surprising, the role of Jess was originally offered to actress Amanda Bynes before Zooey Deschanel was cast.
She likes you, Julie. It's just she never was crazy about any girls they went out with. They were either too fat, too skinny, too short, too tall, too loud, too quiet.
16. Gabe Kaplan from Welcome Back, Kotter. Gabe Kaplan wasn't just the star of Welcome Back, Kotter. The show was based on his own stand-up comedy about his experiences as a high school teacher. As Gabe Kotter, the wisecracking teacher in charge of a remedial class of lovable troublemakers known as the Sweat Hogs, Kaplan was the calm, funny center of the storm. The show was a 70s cultural touchstone. But as the show's popularity exploded, the focus began to shift from Kotter to the Sweat Hogs, particularly to John Travolta's character, Vinnie Barbarino. Travolta became a global superstar, and creative and contract disputes began to brew behind the scenes. Kaplan became increasingly unhappy with the show's direction and his diminishing role. By the 4th and final season, Kaplan was barely on the show that was built around him. A shocking detail is that the show was so popular that a line of Sweat Hog action figures and a board game were released, becoming massive bestsellers. The show's famous catchphrase, "Up your nose with a rubber hose," was often censored or muted by network affiliates in more conservative parts of the country. Even more surprisingly, the series spawned a short-lived spin-off called Mr. T and Tina, which is widely considered one of the worst sitcoms of all time.
Hey, you're new in this profession. You've got to start at the bottom. I was born at the bottom.
17. Jamie Foxworth from Family Matters. Characters getting written off shows is common, but a character simply vanishing into thin air with absolutely no explanation is a rare and bizarre phenomenon. That is the story of Judy Winslow from Family Matters. For the first 4 seasons of the hit TGIF sitcom, Jamie Foxworth played the youngest daughter of Carl and Harriet Winslow. She was a cute, if often overlooked, member of the family. Then, at the beginning of season 5, she was gone. She walked upstairs to her room in one episode and was never seen or heard from again. The family never mentioned her, almost as if she had been erased from their collective memory. The reason for her departure was brutally simple: money and focus. A shocking fact is that Family Matters was actually a spin-off of the show Perfect Strangers, where Harriet Winslow was the elevator operator at the building where Larry and Balky worked. The character of Steve Urkel was only supposed to appear in a single episode as a nerdy one-off joke. But Jaleel White's performance was so popular with the live studio audience that he was immediately brought back, and the entire focus of the show was permanently altered around him.
Are you still enjoying your asparagus, sir?
I was never enjoying it. I only eat it for the nutrients.
18. Christopher Evan Welch from Silicon Valley. Not all departures are due to drama or disputes. Some are the result of real-world tragedy. Christopher Evan Welch gave a comedic tour de force performance in the first season of Silicon Valley as Peter Gregory, a bizarre, eccentric, and brilliant tech billionaire who becomes one of Pied Piper's initial investors. His deadpan delivery and oddball behavior made him an instant fan favorite and a pillar of the show's comedy. Tragically, in December 2013, while the first season was still in production, Welch passed away from lung cancer at the age of 48. He had completed his work on the first 5 episodes, but his death left the show's creators with a heartbreaking and difficult creative challenge. They handled his departure with grace and respect. A shocking detail is that the character of Peter Gregory was heavily based on real-life tech billionaire and PayPal co-founder Peter Thiel, known for his own eccentricities. The character's bizarre obsession with Burger King was a running gag that the writers had planned to explore further before Welch's untimely death. Following Welch's passing, the show brought in the late Laurie Bream as his replacement, creating another iconic but very different kind of socially awkward billionaire to mentor the team.
Look, when I come to the gym, I come to work out. I'm not here to socialize.
Oh, hey, me too, I'm there.
19th, Farrah Fork from Wings. Wings was a quintessential 90s hangout sitcom, a charming ensemble comedy set in a small airport in Nantucket. For much of its run, the central romantic tension revolved around brothers Joe and Brian Hackett and their childhood friend, Helen. But in Season 4, the show introduced a new character who threatened to change everything: Alex Lambert, a helicopter pilot played by Farrah Fork. Alex was a tough, cool, and confident woman who became a major love interest for Brian. Their dynamic was a huge part of Seasons 4 and 5, and it seemed like the show was building towards a real, lasting relationship with a Playboy brother. Fork had great chemistry with the cast and quickly became a fan favorite. And then she just left. At the end of Season 5, Alex moves to London, breaking up with Brian. A shocking detail about the show is that it exists in the same fictional universe as Cheers. Characters like Cliff Clavin and Norm Peterson made a guest appearance on Wings, confirming the shared reality and delighting fans of both shows. The show's main plane, a Cessna 402, had the tail number N121PB, which secretly stood for the show's creators, Grubman and Lillian, plus Paramount and Boston. In a sad twist, Farrah Fork passed away from cancer in 2022, a loss that was deeply felt by fans who remembered her vibrant role as Alex.
Everybody's got somebody but me.
Hello, I'm not with anyone either.
Hello, you're a big loser that says hello.
20. Charlie Sheen from 2.5 Men. This wasn't just a star leaving a show. This was a 5-alarm fire, a public meltdown, a volcanic eruption of ego and chaos that played out in real time for the entire world to see. For 8 seasons, Charlie Sheen was 2.5 Men. As Charlie Harper, he was essentially playing a cartoon version of his own bad boy persona, and it made the show the biggest comedy on the planet. He was the highest-paid actor on television, making nearly $2 million an episode. Then, in 2011, it all imploded. After a series of personal problems and a stint in rehab, Sheen launched a bizarre and vitriolic public attack on the show's creator, Chuck Lorre, calling him a clown and a stupid, stupid little man. What followed was a media frenzy fueled by Sheen's unhinged interviews, in which he declared he had tiger blood and was winning. The network had no choice. They fired him. A shocking detail is that the show's iconic theme song was not performed by a famous artist, but was sung by studio musicians and even featured the show's own composer on guitar. In the series finale, Chuck Lorre got the ultimate revenge, having a Sheen lookalike crushed by a piano before Lorre himself turned to the camera and said winning, only to be crushed by another piano. This bizarre ending cemented the show's legacy as one of the most successful and simultaneously dysfunctional sitcoms ever made.